It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we are going to discuss the British sitcom, The IT Crowd, which I don't know if you've seen this or if you haven't seen this. It's a hilarious show. It's popped up around the time, like I want to say like around the time of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
Yeah, it was mid 2000s.
Yeah, and I think, and it also has a few of the same cast members that are interchangeable. Was it? I want to say that Garth Marenghi's Dark Place also aired on Channel 4.
That's a good question.
Because if so, there seems to be a connection with Channel 4 and the actors that are on the sitcoms on Channel 4 during this time.
It was also on Channel 4.
Huh, interesting.
And I believe also The Mighty Boosh was probably also on Channel 4. Let's take a look.
So interesting. Richard Ayoade seems to have a strange connection with Channel 4 then.
Yeah,
The
Mighty Boosh was actually on BBC 3, which is interesting because Noel Fielding, who is one of the main characters or plays one of the main characters in The Mighty Boosh, he's in also in the IT Crowd.
Yes, he makes very sporadic appearances.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really interesting. I mean, they might have just all been friends and just happened to be working on different shows and just got each other on the show. I'm sure that the British comedy scene in that area, like during that time, was pretty small. Well,
Julian Barrett. Julian Barrett of the Mighty Boosh comedy troupe is also in the IT Crowd.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, so they were probably all a bunch of friends who were just, hey, I'm on this show, now I'm doing this show, and they were probably good friends with a lot of the creators, and the creators were just in there just giving their ideas.
I think I could be wrong about that.
Okay, well, if you are, you are. We don't have like fact checkers or anything like that. This is just two guys just winging it, trying to give you the good people, the very best show that you could possibly get. If you don't know what we are Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that talks about weird stuff in pop culture, whether it's a TV show like we're going to do, a band like we just did with Deicide, or just anything in between. That's generally what we're going to discuss. And we would like to make a quick announcement before we get started. We have finally reached 100 freaking subscribers on our YouTube channel. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Hell froze over. It happened. Thank you, Deicide, for getting us people to listen to. And yes, I am going to try to not say the word like too many times. It is a very bad tick that I have. And when I get excited, I start to say it. It's pretty much you watching my brain work, and it hurts because it's not a fun process. My brain is very damaged from life and other things. But we would like to give a shout out to Ballin' Angel of Doom, whose mother smelled of elderberries. Thank you very much for subscribing and being number 100. You are our number 100 guy or gal, whoever you are. I believe that the heart does go on, but you can go fuck yourself. That's the news. Here's the weather. We're now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues, so let's get on with the goddamn show. This is Why Does This Exist? We are talking about the IT crowd. And yes. I've got nothing else to say about Ballin' Angel of Doom. I had some jokes lined up, but unfortunately, they're just not going to make it to air. Speaking of other things that didn't make it to air, there was originally going to be 5 seasons of the IT crowd, but it kind of got derailed. And they're due to scheduling issues with a lot of the actors because their careers just started really taking off. So there wasn't really time to get everybody in to make that 5th season. And what they ended up doing was just making a series finale as a big special episode on in September 2013. So there was about a 3-year period in between the 4th season and the special just because that was the best that they could really do. And I think that, and I really appreciate that they, even though it took a while, that they still were able to give people a nice send-off. I haven't watched the whole series, but I've watched a good chunk of the first couple of seasons where we get Matt Berry in and just his character. I mean, Matt Berry, we talked about him quite a bit on the Garth Marenghi's Dark Place episode.
Yeah.
And a lot of his characters are very similar. They're just they're these charismatic, kind of like, hey, hey baby, these like Fonzie characters, and who are just, very promiscuous and very open about their sexual activities. Just very interesting and fun to see. He plays Douglas, Douglas Reinholm, who is the estranged son of the CEO. What is his name?
The CEO is Doug Reinholm.
No,
or Denholm.
No,
Denholm.
He's Doug.
Denholm,
yes.
Right. So,
Denholm Renholm.
Yeah.
He ends up being he's also a crazy guy too. But Matt Berry ends up being the estranged son of his who shows up at the funeral, and we're introduced to his character at the funeral. And that episode is just funny in itself because it's there's not really the fun thing about the IT crowd is it was probably very cheap to produce because there's only really one set that they use, and occasionally they'll use other sets like the funeral church, or there might be another guy's apartment, but for the most part, it's all taking place inside the IT room.
In the basement.
Yeah, exactly. It is the basement. But nothing really happens on the show.
No.
It's just a bunch of scenarios. So, say what you will, Seinfeld had the winning formula the entire time.
Yeah.
Shows don't have to be about anything. Nothing really has to happen. The characters don't have to improve. They just have to be there.
Well, it kind of reminds me of like the way it's filmed and how it takes place on one set, and even like the dialogue and the comedy style. It reminds me a lot of like 80s or 70s American sitcoms like Taxi, which takes place. See that. It takes place in only in the cab station, and rarely goes outside, and it's all just like these interactions between these characters within this that one location. And I feel like this is very similar to that, whereas it never really leaves the basement. I mean, you get glimpses to the upstairs levels and stuff, but it's not it's mostly centered in the IT department. And so it kind of reminded me of that, like the very classic sitcom, 80s, 90s sitcom, or not even 90s, like 70s, 80s sitcom, like Taxi or Cheers, that kind of feel to it.
Right. And I do appreciate how I know it's called the IT crowd, but also I do appreciate all of the IT references and and all of the tech jokes that they have, where it's not like people making fun of the IT department. It's just kind of embracing the IT department and how nobody really knows what they do.
Yeah,
And I mean, there are sometimes the stereotypes of people just assuming that IT doesn't really do anything. But
yeah,
to be honest, on a good day, IT might not have to do a whole lot because
yeah,
their whole job is just helping other people do theirs.
yeah.
So
You know, one of the
if
one of
everybody's computer is working fine, then there's no reason for IT to really be doing much. But
well, and not
occasionally someone will call in, and for the most part, and this is where I appreciate the genius of the IT crowd is the first thing that they'll do when they pick up a call at the help center is the first thing that they'll say is, "Hi, is it plugged in? Are you sure it's plugged in?"
yeah.
Which, yes, it's a running gag of the show, but
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
you would 90% of the time, that's the problem.
Yeah. Also, Roy always asks, like, did you try turning it off and on again? Like,
Yes.
that's another like classic thing, and it's basically like again 90% of the problems in IT are something stupid like that, where you could turn it off and on again and it works, and so it really, like, it makes sense that they can get into like other shenanigans, because that's really like their jobs are can be solved pretty easily. The main character Roy, he also he wears like a lot of like nerdy shirts and stuff like that, t-shirts that are some kind of reference. He plays video games, and I would say the humor is kind of similar to like Big Bang Theory in like regards to like nerd culture and stuff like that, but it doesn't go over the top with it like Big Bang Theory thing does. Like Big Bang Theory gets old really fast. But I feel like the IT crowd is like, it's subtle enough where it's not like always like all they're doing is joking about like nerds and nerdy stuff.
I still don't understand how the Big Bang Theory went on to be what it is.
I know it
I've
was
seen-
good in like the first couple of seasons, and it got old very quickly.
I've seen some episodes here and there. It's not my cup of tea.
No.
I'm not sure whose cup. I mean, it's a lot of people's cups of tea, but mine is not one of them.
I mean, it's pretty much only worth watching for Sheldon, because he's really the only likable character.
Yeah, I guess.
The rest of them, it's like they seem like very disingenuous nerds. Like Sheldon, actually, I think comes off as like, okay, this guy is like legitimately like a nerd, and he doesn't give a shit about anybody else. So, because it's pretty funny. But
Speaking of things that are great in cups of tea, I had a hot toddy with mead today.
oh.
Yeah, it was delicious. What the heck was it called? I think it was called Skull of Odin or something like that. But it had green apples and yeah, it was quite lovely. Just put that in a chamomile and just get ripped.
Nice.
Yeah. Not a bad way to start a Monday, folks, let me tell you. I know it's Sunday, but it'll be Monday soon.
Yeah, you gotta fucking prepare for Monday.
Listen, it's either going to be that or some pumpkin Baileys in my coffee, depending on what route I take. Will I have a job tomorrow? That's the $1 million question.
Oh.
Let's see what I do.
Dun dun dun.
No, that was a terrible omen. Great. Well, now everybody knows that something bad is possibly bound to happen. I hope
great.
that HR isn't listening to this, because I assure you I will be fine. But just for all intents and purposes, HR, I'm not going to do the thing I just said I was going to do. Or as far as you're concerned, I would never do that ever. Ever, ever. Anyway, back to the IT crowd. bringing it back to T, because there is a T in IT, and also it's a British sitcom, so there's lots of T everywhere, but not necessarily this show. I do also appreciate the characters feeling genuine.
Yeah.
Just again to reiterate your point from The Big Bang Theory, they do feel like they are legit, like just IT guys. Like they are people who,
Yes.
like they feel like they're people who I would expect to just run into, and they would say, "Yeah, I work in IT." Like I'd see,
Yeah.
I expect to run into a guy like Roy at a bar,
They
and
don't-
we're like, and that's that. But also like Richard Ayoade's character Moss, he really got the social awkwardness down, and a lot of his
Yeah.
characters are socially awkward. But I think he got that down really well in this role, where it's not done in a taunting way or anything. It's not done as like a stereotype, but it comes across as a guy who's trying but is maybe not aware of how socially awkward he might be.
Yeah.
For example, the second episode in season 2, he reads an ad. He decides to take up a cooking class to be a little more social. So he ends up he finds an ad online. I guess it would be like Craigslist or something like that. And he walks over and well, not walks over, but he goes to this person's house where he thinks that they're holding a cooking class. And it turns out that this person is a cannibal.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And it's a German guy whose English isn't very good. So in the ad, he wrote, "I'd like to." It was something along the lines of, "I'd like to cook with you," but it's obviously he means I would like to cook with you and eat you and use you as my meal. I'd like to cook with your body parts, but it doesn't come off that way in the ad. So Moss goes over, they have the talk about it, and the German fellow is very, very excited because he's finally going to have a consenting person who allows him to eat him, which that did happen. There is a real story of cannibalism where a guy put an ad online to eat someone, and they got a willing participant, and very interesting story. But that was a real thing that happened, and I bet you that that had happened around the time when they were writing this episode, and that's probably where they got the inspiration for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, the fellow who's the German is also he's a really good. I believe he plays a cello or an oboe in that episode, and he's quite good. Anyway, they get to the thing, and he starts telling him, what are we going to cook today? I thought we were making German food. What have you prepared for us to cook? And the German fellow is just, "Oh, no, it's you." And there's the obvious misunderstanding. And then he's back at work. So Moss is telling them the story, and Jen, who we haven't gotten to yet, Jen and Roy are sitting there like, "Dude, did you call the police? Like, how are you still alive? Like, did he try to eat you? What happened? Like, how did you make it back to work?" And he's like, "Oh, it's okay. We ended up watching a movie." They're like, "You watched a movie with him after or before?" "No, after. It was a total misunderstanding." But he's a cannibal. He could have tried to eat you. No, he wouldn't do it if if I wasn't consenting. So he like basically befriends a cannibal,
Yeah.
and he doesn't seem to realize that this was a very dangerous and deadly situation for him. But he just happened to find the nice cannibal. So just silly little things like that. But also, it's funny when someone doesn't know what they're talking about when they're talking about computers around him, and then suddenly he gets this confidence and he can just school them on just any computer, any tech shit like around. It's really cool. Now you can talk for a while because I've been ranting.
I was gonna say, you know, like you had said before, how they come off as like being like almost like real people you would meet that actually work in IT. And I was gonna say yes, like they actually come off like as genuine, like they feel like real people that you would meet, like you said, like they're not like over the top. And I think that's the problem with Big Bang Theory, not to make this into like the Big Theory hate episode. But in that, you could very clearly tell it's actors playing caricatures of nerds and nerd culture. And this is like, it feels like they're just like a couple of like slightly nerdy guys that work in IT and are just like regular kind of, yeah, okay, they're a little bit socially awkward, but they're pretty normal overall. So yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think that comes off and makes it the characters more likable because they feel like like an everyman kind of thing where it's like, oh, you can identify with these people because they're not a caricature, they're just like legit like regular guys. But it's like I said, it's interesting that it is a British comedy because it doesn't really feel so much like a British comedy because I think oftentimes British humor is lost on the American audience, and this isn't.
No, not at all.
It's very it's relatable even if you don't live in England. Ooh, excuse me. And I was also I thought it was interesting for a sitcom that came out in the 2000s to have a laugh track. That actually surprised me because you don't, laugh tracks have largely gone the way of the dodo bird. I feel like, you don't really hear them so much anymore. Or actually, it kind of felt like it sounded like more like it was a live studio live studio audience, not just piped in laughter.
That's possible.
Which again, like that's something that you really don't see anymore in sitcoms.
I've heard that they're starting to bring them back.
Yeah.
But I think it's just more of a cycle. I mean, not that we've had TV for quite a while, but I don't think that we've had it long enough where everything is becoming a cycle where you're even seeing that now where it seemed like the answer was going to be streaming services until nobody could make them profitable because it's just a bunch of fucking suits at the ivory tower who are just sitting there like, make it make money,
Mm-hmm.
where not understanding how running the streaming service and all the licensing costs and all the costs to make like for production and everything, how it's just not feasible on like on a $10 model or anything. But of course, or they probably just didn't listen to anyone who was telling them what they needed to actually do.
Yeah.
And just were like, make it make money.
Yeah.
Well, instead just ignoring them, and God knows how much debt they go into over this shit. Like, if you want like a prime example of the biggest fucking idiot CEO who has a streaming service it's Warner Discovery. David Zaslav is the biggest fucking idiot in the world who is making billions for no reason. That just because you're smart, just because you're rich does not mean that you are smart. That's proof of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I'm getting at is it's gone from everyone doing a streaming service and thinking that their service is going to be the one that's going to be the profitable one because, like most people, they think, oh, that won't happen to me, and then it does. Now we're going back to cable, which was the problem that streaming services were trying to solve in the first place because cable was too expensive. But now streaming services bundling with other streaming services creates cable.
Yeah.
So, and now you have multiple bundles where
Yeah, but I
it's
mean, you
more
don't have,
expensive than cable. No, you don't have to have any of these things at all.
and you don't have to buy the bundles. That's the thing, is you could like
Right.
I only have Netflix, Amazon Prime, which again, Prime is like a no-brainer because I have Prime anyway for like free Prime delivery and all the other benefits that come with it. So I just get free like video along with it.
Right. Amazon's
So
got you by the ball, so they're not
yeah,
worrying about that part. So they're
and
pretty,
then
it seems like they're basically just throwing Prime in.
right, and then I have Netflix, so it's like and Max. So I have those three, and then I like I borrow Hulu, so because my parents have it, and they live right across the street, so it's not like far away enough where it like cancels out or whatever. It thinks that I'm in like another country or something, so I can actually watch our Hulu. It's allowed; they allow it.
Okay.
So but like it's like you don't have to have all of them, and there's so many free ones now, which again I have to shout out Pluto once again, because
Yes,
Pluto
Pluto,
is the
baby.
only one that had the IT crowd. I mean, you could get it, like rent it on Amazon Prime Video for like $1.99 each or something, so which I wasn't going to do that. So again, Pluto, shout out to Pluto. Pluto's becoming like the new Tubi, I feel like.
Yeah, both of those streaming services are really clutch for just
Yes.
watching any obscure shit or
Yeah.
some really cool shit that you can't find on the other platforms.
And like, yeah, if you don't pay for it, you obviously have to watch it with ads, but like it's not really that bad. It's like a regular commercial break. You see like 2 or 3 advertisements and it goes back to your show.
I mean, to be honest, most regular streaming services that you're paying for now are adding ads anyway because they
Yes.
have the option where it's super expensive to just have no ads. So you're better off just stick to Tubi and Pluto.
Yeah. And they have quite a good selection.
They do. If you're very nostalgia driven or you want to watch some obscure movies or obscure TV shows, they're perfect for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we I think it was Tubi where we watched Blackula.
Yeah, it was no, I watched it on Pluto.
No.
How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Okay. So maybe
I watched it on
matter.
Pluto. I mean, it might have been on Tubi too, but I watched it on Pluto.
Okay. I watched Clerks on Pluto. I think that's where I discovered it.
Oh.
Because I think Tubi is where I found out about the Tales of the Crypt Keeper cartoon, where I was able to watch that. Anyway, my point is similar to how cable is going back around in the form of streaming service bundles now. Because we haven't had TV too long, we had live studio audiences, then we got rid of live studio audiences for a while for sitcoms. Now we're coming back into them after a whole pandemic, and people, years later, still kind of trying to adjust to life as normal and people being not as social as they used to be. So this is now something else for people to go to, something else for them to do, and also something that can spice up a show because now it stands out from every other show because they're not doing it anymore. So I think we'll see this in cycles as people live their lives over centuries, or maybe the aliens will just come, wipe everything out, and we'll just start fresh. Maybe that's what happened the first time. I think we've talked about that at some point. about how aliens are probably just come and reset everything. But I digress. You'll
I don't
have to
think they
find
are,
the
because they would have.
episode.
I think they would have done that already if they really wanted to.
Maybe they're holding. Maybe they're waiting on something, or like a resource that they haven't quite gotten all that they need. I don't know. I'm not in contact with the aliens, so I have no idea what the plan is. Or maybe they're just keeping the Earth in check, like we've said, and
Yeah,
we haven't quite done anything
yeah.
stupid enough to destroy ourselves yet. But we'll get there.
Uh,
Anyway,
so
back to the IT crowd. We haven't talked about Jen yet. Who
yeah,
the Jen is the appointed boss from day one of the
yes.
episode, even though it's clear that Roy and Moss have probably been working in that IT department for years.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that Jen inadvertently gets put there because she lied on her resume and said she was good with computers. So the CEO is just like, "Oh, good, we need a boss for the IT department." So there you go. Like,
This is
so
also a universe where everyone except the IT department is completely incompetent with anything technical.
yeah. Well, I think it's supposed to be set during the 90s, I believe. Uh, and
Maybe that's why they have the live studio audience or the laugh track.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was filmed in the 2000s, but that could be. But yeah, you have to. So you're going back, with the knowledge of today. Like, oh, I don't understand how anybody could like not know how to do anything IT wise. And it's like, yeah, but going back into the 90s, people didn't know how to do IT shit. Like people, that was like computers were just really starting to take over the world, back then.
Oh
So
yeah.
it wasn't like it is now where like, yeah, everybody has a supercomputer in their pocket at all times,
Yeah.
so everybody knows how to use a computer. It was different back then. So it's not that they're incompetent. It's actually, I would say, is a quite realistic representation of like what freaking boomers know about technology.
I mean, incompetent to a point where they're not even turning it on.
Well,
But then again, this is where the IT stuff came from. Of like, yes, that's a running gag on the show, but this is
it's
what
real.
when you go to when you take an IT class, that is the first thing that they tell you that you're supposed to say.
Yes.
And it's also usually one of the first questions that you get when you're asking an IT person for help with something is they're either asking you if it's on, if it's plugged in, if it's um like if you've run the program, if you've installed the latest version of the software or anything like that. That's usually their first thing. I've probably said this before, but there was a point between when I was going to switch careers and one of the careers that I was thinking about doing was IT. So
Yeah.
I took an IT class for about 4 months, and that was one of the things that came up was specifically that. The problem is, and I don't know, well, to get into IT, really, you have to pass certain certifications by this board called CompTIA, where the questions are not necessarily hard, but the way that it's the legalese and the way that these questions are asked, where it's a total fucking mindfuck. And it's like you have to decipher this thing, and it's like reading a code, and then you have to answer the question. But the answer is actually the answer is very simple, but the question is just laid out in such a ridiculous way where it makes the test incredibly hard, and the tests are also expensive to get the certifications.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there is a shortage in IT jobs now, and there's also an issue with the CompTIA test being expensive and difficult, and you really, for the most part, you're not going to do the hardest stuff, and there should be an alternative, but alas, there is not. But anybody who wants to learn a little bit about this stuff on a more layman's terms level, just go to Professor Messer's sites and just watch his tutorials. He's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who wants to just get into IT a little bit, Professor Messer is your guy. Anyway, it was a lot of really cool stuff that we learned in that class. We actually took apart computers and put them back together
Yeah.
and all kinds of really neat stuff. But I ended up not pursuing that. I ended up doing something else. But that's another story for another day. But I do. It makes me appreciate this show more
Mm-hmm.
because of just how many things that you really are going to run into that they teach you in school.
Yeah. I forgot what I was gonna say. Shit.
We were talking about Jen before this,
Right.
but Jen is also, Jen. The other two guys don't like her at first because she's their new boss and she clearly doesn't know her way around a computer despite saying that she did.
Yes.
But they end up getting along pretty quickly and Jen, she doesn't really know what her job is. She
Mm-hmm.
just knows that she's supposed to be the boss of the IT guys, but she also can't really be their boss because she doesn't know what the hell she's doing or what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So she kind of so she over time she keeps calling herself the relationship manager and
Mm-hmm.
that's actually a pretty fitting title for that even now you'll see that title exist in some areas of HR is the relationship manager or the people person or the people manager or whatever it is,
Yeah.
which I mean we've said this before, titles are stupid and don't really mean anything, but it's interesting how you get some of them. But this particular description tends to fit because the IT guys are, socially awkward. For example, in the first episode, Roy goes to the bathroom or something, and he tells Moss to tell him about that one story in Belgium or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells the entire office the story about the time where they got prostitutes and they were too scared to do anything with them, so they took them to a carnival and the prostitutes charged them half because they paid for the carnival tickets.
Oh my god.
And the whole office is terrified. And then Roy comes back and he's like, what story did you tell him? And he goes, oh, I told him about the time with the prostitutes. He's like, that's the story I told you never to tell anyone. And he's like, yeah, I thought that was weird. And he's like, what story was I supposed to tell? He's like, oh, you wanted me to tell him about the time we got drunk and got locked out of our rooms, but we had the key the whole time, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but also the exchanges that the IT guys have with just regular people, it usually just ends in complete chaos.
Yeah.
Which is, fitting. But they almost get into it on like a Seinfeldian level. It's just not shot that way.
Yeah.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I do also like that nobody really knows what they do at the company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, again, goes back to my point of like it being, none of them are actually, everybody's pretty much tech illiterate except for them. So. Well, it only went for 4 seasons, as you said, and it was canceled. And I forget what they wanted to make a 5th season, but it ended up being,
They ended up having scheduling conflicts with everybody on there, and they just couldn't get it to work.
And the budget, they couldn't get the budget for it, which I guess makes sense because it was fairly low budget, and that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I can see that.
There, it was put into syndication. Obviously, it was actually in the United States. It was broadcast on both IFC and G4, which technically is a Canadian station, but if you had premium cable, you could get it. G4, they had all kinds of video game related shows like X Play and Attack of the Show, and then they would also play these obscure shows, sitcoms and stuff like that, like the IT Crowd, that aren't in the United States. Weren't broadcast originally.
I do miss G4. That was
it was a pretty awesome channel.
Yeah, we might have to do an episode on that itself someday.
Yeah,
There's another show that I would like to do an episode on too from that era. It was Code Monkeys. I believe it was a G4 original.
I was actually going to bring that up.
Hysterical.
That the IT Crowd actually reminded me a lot of Code Monkeys.
Just
because of like the time period and it's a show that was made in the 2000s but it's based in like the 90s. And that's same thing with Code Monkeys, and like it's got all the nerd references from like those those times. Interesting that they also both played on G4.
Yes.
It kind of like IFC and G4. I feel like that Tubi and Pluto TV are really like the successors to those two, honestly, because both IFC and G4 played really obscure shit that you would never be able to find anywhere else, and I feel like Tubi and then they would also play a lot of classic stuff that they didn't play on any of the other channels. So I feel like Tubi and Pluto kind of like taken up that mantle a little bit. IFC had some great shows too, like
you can watch
Whitest Kids You Know.
Peacock.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Okay. Anyway,
but Whitest Kids You Know was on IFC also, and that show's hilarious. So yeah, they had some good shows. So it makes sense that they would.
I never got super into Whitest Kids You Know. I watched.
I liked it. It was funny.
I saw it here and there, but not on G4. I saw it on Fuse.
No, it's on IFC.
I'm sorry, IFC. I also saw it on Fuse here and there.
Yeah.
Which there's another like forgotten TV channel that was pretty cool for a minute. It was a good MTV alternative when MTV just started being only reality TV. But I have no idea what happened to that channel. I feel like it was probably a funding thing. And most people really just tuned in to watch the metal show with like the very hot Mistress Julia.
Mm.
But I don't know. Uranium was the name of the show. That's right. Anyway, that is another episode for another day. But there have been other adaptations of the IT Crowd.
Yes.
I haven't seen any other versions of them.
I haven't seen the American version. Starred Joel McHale as Roy. Interestingly enough, Richard Ayoade like portrays Moss in that also. So for some reason they replaced everybody else, but still got Richard Ayoade to play Moss. I guess
maybe that was part of the deal to bring it back. It was probably I would say it's probably a network thing. The network probably said they wouldn't do it unless they brought him back because
it aired. Well, no, it aired while the British one was still on.
Oh, that's weird.
2007, 2008 is when it first aired. It ended up not being picked up apparently though.
So what did they just do? The pilot?
I think they did a pilot and one season.
Oh yeah, here we go. The show would not reach production despite
it didn't quite spark
development. Yeah. So okay, so the new NBC chairman just didn't like it. So
yeah.
He probably just scrapped it because
so it's like that episode of Seinfeld where
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so it did kind of play out like it played out pretty much just like that. So he was I wouldn't be surprised if if they were looking at things to cut and this just happened to be one of those easy ones where they could just or they could free up they could free up the budget or the balance sheet when it came to just shareholder stuff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me because I mean, how much money do you really sink into it? Or maybe there was something else that went into development that they just took the resources from the IT crowd and they put it into something else. Would have been interesting if
Yeah.
that was well, when did the American version of The Office?
I think 2004, 2005.
Okay, so either well, anyway, this show didn't happen. I don't exactly know why, and the info that we got is not good enough. So my conclusion is that they were trying to take budgets from one project and put it into others, so they had to
NBC might have felt
get
it would
rid
have
of it.
been too much competition for The Office and
That could have
canceled it
been
because The
that.
Office was, I believe, also on NBC at the time, and they probably didn't want it. They had another British or another American adaptation of a British sitcom that was very popular in Britain. So they didn't want to like interrupt The Office because that it was probably they probably had people saying, yeah, this is going to be like a direct competition with our own show. We don't want to do that.
I could see that. If that was what was printed, I would totally buy it. If somebody came up to me and said that this was why, which you just did, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like the smoking gun.
Yeah.
I would like to see that pilot,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But it's the British version is always usually better.
yes,
So I can't
yes,
imagine
is.
it was much better than the British version, the American version. The problem is that you have to change it to fit American audiences. American audiences oftentimes don't understand British comedy, as I said before. And a lot of British comedy is very dry and very clever, and that doesn't hit well in America as much. There's not really the American comedy is way more like boisterous, I would say. With punchlines and like the jokes are way more like out to the front. It's not like a subtle build up as much as British comedy is.
Mhm.
So when they bring these British shows over to America, they have to change it to make it, they write the script differently and write the jokes differently, so it hits better with the American audience. And I think sometimes that like affects the show negatively.
It's possible. I mean, the jokes may not have been very good for the American
Well, and
show, or they may not have been rewritten in a way where it passed the test with focus groups.
it's not even just the comedy aspect of it.
Well,
Also, like other British shows, when they're brought to America, are often rewritten to appeal to a more American audience. A perfect example is Hell's Kitchen. If you watch the British version of Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay is not screaming, he's not yelling, he's like, everything's very calm and collected, and it's like, okay, these are professional chefs doing their job. And then it came to America, and like Americans want to see screaming and drama and yelling, and that's so he like played it up for the camera to make it more appealing to Americans.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
There is also a German version of the IT Crowd. I've never seen this.
No.
They only did 2 episodes, so again, probably a similar issue with the jokes just not working. I mean, I don't. It's yeah. Oh yeah, that's actually one of the criticisms here. Just the original stories and jokes were just everything was done badly.
Yeah.
It seems, and they canned it after 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah. Once again, the British reign supreme at the sitcoms, and I don't know. I don't have a whole lot else to say about this show except it's really great, and I
Yeah,
think
it's fun.
it's interesting how it didn't hit for years
Yeah.
in the States. I didn't find out about it until I was in college when it was first on Netflix, and I early 20s.
Yeah.
So at least a decade, like a little bit longer than a decade.
I mean, I knew about it when it was in syndication on like G4 and stuff. I just never really watched it because, like, I was like, high school / early college age, and like at that time, I didn't want to watch like a sitcom necessarily. I was like more interested in G4 for like Attack of the Show and X-Play and shit like that. So I wasn't really watching these kinds of shows. So, I knew about it. I had heard about the show, but I never really watched it until now.
Yeah, it's a fun show. Honestly,
Yeah.
A lot of the shows that we'll watch for the podcast, I'll usually watch a few and then I'll just kind of drop off. But I feel like this is a show that I think I'm gonna keep going back to, or I'll stick with.
Yeah.
Because I do like it, and it is really funny, and it is right up my alley. So I think this is a hit. Thank you, Pluto, and thank you, 2B.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably a bunch of other cool shit that we could find on there that we could just talk about. But that's all that I have to say about the IT crowd. I thought that it's just a really clever show. It doesn't do more than it needs to do. I know let me take back one thing that I said earlier. I said that nothing happens. The only thing that does really happen is the Denholm Douglas thing, where the boss kills himself after he's being investigated and for a pension fund scheme, and then Matt Berry comes in. So that's the one thing that happens and it's a big thing. But then they kind of just pick up as if nothing did. It just seems like life goes on, I guess, like you normally do, which is weird. But just more in a comedic fashion, where it's just, oh, okay, he's at the funeral and now we left and that's that. But yeah. So some things do happen on this show, but for the most part, nothing happens, and that's kind of the best. That's kind of the best. It's just a bunch of scenarios, and then they go back to being themselves the following episode. But yeah, IT Crowd, great show. Another good one in the books for Richard Ayoade, who seems to not be able to miss with us, and yeah, fun times.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked it out, head on over to Pluto and go watch it. That's all I've got to say about that. Any closing statements, Rob?
No. That's pretty much it.
Alrighty. Well, this has been another episode of Why Does This Exist? I have been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.